Hi and welcome to another narration, presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Let's just take a moment's silence for all the haters. That's enough. Be sure to check out the blooper reel at the end of the video, which is then followed by the end screen where you will find more videos listed. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. The Monster Under the Bed, Part 1. This awesome two-part series is written by Corpse Child. I think most, if not all of us, had a time in our lives when we used to be afraid of the monster under the bed, or the thing in the closet. That time when everything would be just fine until the lights went out, where we then begged mummy or daddy to snuggle up with them that night. Oh, for a while they'd humour you and let you sleep in their bed. Eventually though, they'd of course have to stop allowing this, leading to them feeding you all that too familiar line, "There's no such thing as the monster under your bed." What did you do then? Did you used to cry, maybe show your ass, until they relented out of sheer exhausted desperation? Did you refuse to sleep, forcing your parents to put you on prescription medications? Maybe you used to cocoon yourself in the blankets to keep from being seen when the monster came out, right? Let me ask you this. What was your monster like? Was it covered in fur? Or have green scaly snake-like skin? Did it have drooling fangs or large curved talons? Did it used to growl and scratch your bedpost at night to tease you into pissing the bed? Did you ever actually see it? Of course not, right? I mean, like your parents told you, there's no such thing as the monster under your bed, right? Well, I wouldn't know. See, I'm just going off of speculation with all of that. Yeah, I too had the problem of a monster under the bed, but mine was very different. Mine was actually real, far too real. I'll say right now that this has stuck with me for years, ever since that night. That was the night I learned that the monster was real and more haunting than anything my pre-teen brain at the time could have conjured up. It's affected my entire perception of life, of morality, and of the world in general. I've been seeing my therapist since middle school about it, because of the way my mind has been so fucked by it all. I'd recounted this story to him at least 10,000 times now, and now on his belief that writing it all out may make it a little easier a pill to finally swallow, here I am telling this to you. For a while growing up I lived with my Aunt Mabel. I'd always been told that my folks were killed in a car accident when I was 4, and I didn't really remember much about them before that night. I remember that night too, seeing the blue flashing lights outside the kitchen window while I was making a mess of my spaghetti and meatballs at the dinner table. My grandma was babysitting me that night, letting them go out for a date night, and was baking her warm, soft, homemade cookies for dessert when it all happened. I remember Grandma telling me to go to my room until she said I could come back out. I was confused. I didn't understand what I'd done wrong. She said that everything was okay, that I just needed to wait in my room for a minute and we'd have cookies afterwards. I remember peeking out from my room when she opened the door, seeing a tall police officer on the porch with his hat on his chest. I saw Grandma start crying, not knowing at all why. I wanted to beat up that police officer for making my grandma cry. I remember bolting out screaming, "Get away from my grandma, you big bully!" punching and kicking feebly at his legs. Grandma pulled me away and hugged me close. "Are you okay, Grandma? Why are you crying? What did that mean man do?" I just remember Grandma squeezing me tighter and tighter to her, whispering, "I'm so sorry, Timmy. God, I'm so sorry." "What's wrong, Grandma?" "Hey there, buddy," I heard another police officer say. "Why don't we go into the living room and talk for a sec? Just you and me." I clutched onto Grandma, but she urged me to follow the officer into the living room. "Go on, Timmy, it's okay," she softly whispered, her voice broken. I slowly let go of her and followed the officer into the living room. We sat down on the couch in the living room and she smiled, asking my name. "Timothy," I answered quietly, sheepishly. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Timothy. I'm Officer Harriet." "Now, Timothy, do you know what police officers do?" I nodded blankly. "You catch the bad guys, right? Like Superman or Batman?" "That's right. Very good," she said, smiling warmly. "But we also have to protect the good guys, like you and your parents." I looked at her, my young eyes entrapped by her warm, tender smile. I barely registered her voice as she spoke because of this. She also asked me if I knew what the ambulance does. I gave her more or less the same answer, that they made the boo-boos get better, just like mommy kisses. "Are my mommy and daddy okay?" I think even back then I still noticed something was up with her face when I asked this. I remember seeing the way it sort of sunk, as if in hesitation, before putting that tender smile back on. I knew this meant she was having to think about what exactly to say to me. Finally she spoke up, telling me that there was a bad car accident and that my parents were hurt very bad and that they'd been taken to the hospital. "But the hospital's gonna make their boo-boos go away, right?" I'll never forget the look she had on her face in that moment. It was a look that, though I wouldn't have understood at the time, still left a mark on me, and one I'd learned the meaning of all too well later in life. The plastic smile. The smile that said, "How in the name of God am I supposed to tell this kid, this sweet little boy, that things weren't okay, that there might not be a happy ending here?" She ruffled my hair and said that the nurses and doctors at the hospital were gonna do everything they could. About a minute later, Grandma came in and Officer Harriet left. Grandma just held me close to her like before, and we just sat in silence for a while, save only for her soft weeping. "Grandma, I want to see Mommy and Daddy. Can we go see them?" She looked at me, eyes still flooding with tears. "First thing in the morning, okay? I promise." I wasn't happy with this, but I didn't want to push any further and risk upsetting Grandma more. So we just sat there on the couch, her gently rocking me back and forth until eventually, probably out of sheer exhaustion, she fell asleep. I didn't sleep that night though. I just curled up in Grandma's arms, eyes wide, wanting nothing more than to see my mother and father again. As promised, the next morning we went to the hospital. That was another first for me, seeing the inside of the hospital. I remember looking around, seeing mostly older folks hooked up with oxygen tubes and wires, as well as others who were in full body casts and slings. Seeing all of this, I remember feeling panicked chills shoot straight through me, fearing what I'd see when we got to my parents' room. When we got to the room, there she was, my mother, fast asleep. She was hooked up to several machines herself, and I could hear her steady, yet still somewhat irregular breaths as her chest very slowly rose and fell. I saw that her face, arms and legs were covered in a bunch of cuts and bruises. "Mommy," I murmured, shaking her arm. "Mommy, wake up." When she wouldn't wake up, I shook her harder until eventually Grandma had to pull me away, still squealing. "Tim." Her voice was faint, weak, but I heard it. "Mommy!" I exclaimed, breaking free of Grandma and rushing to her again. Her eyes opened very limply, like there were lead weights hanging from them, and she slowly lolled her head over to the side to see me. Me. "Mommy, are you okay?" Her face was blank, almost completely devoid of life, and her voice was little more than a rasping whisper. I saw her hand limply rise up to touch my face. Her fingers felt like feathers brushing weightlessly across my face. "Me. What's wrong, Mommy? Where's Dad?" I was confused. I was scared. Most of all, I just wanted my mother and father and to go home. Her eyes began to close again, one last time, whispering, My Tim, me." I immediately began shaking her again, squealing, "Mommy!" This time, she didn't wake up. Once again, Grandma pulled me away and we left the room while a group of nurses went in. I was already well into the waterworks by that point, and I asked Grandma, "What about Dad?" She hugged me before giving me $2 and telling me to go get myself a treat or two from the vending machine while she asked one of the nurses. I didn't want to, but I obeyed and went to the vending machines for a honey bun and an apple juice. I wasn't really hungry, so just sat there nibbling pitifully at the honey bun while sniffing, wondering what was happening. How in one instant my world was being twisted and turned every which way but loose. When I found Grandma again, she was crying in the arms of one of the doctors, while two others rolled a large metal table with something big covered by a white sheet out of the room she was in. "What happened, Grandma? Where's Dad? Is he okay?" "Oh, Timmy," she bawled, squeezing me in a rough bear hug. "I'm so sorry." My eyes flooded instantly, looking over my shoulder at the doctors pushing the metal table down the hall. Though I didn't really understand much regarding the actual concept of death at the time, I still was unfortunate enough to understand the bitter fact that I wasn't going to see my father ever again. What made it worse was that something told me the same wasn't long to happen for my mother. We didn't stay at the hospital long after that. We went back to the house and Grandma told me to pack some clothes and a few toys in my little Batman backpack, telling me that I was going to be staying with her for a little while until my mother could come home again. Normally I'd have jumped for joy at that, being able to go to Grandma's for an extended stay, but not then. At that time I would have killed just to stay home and have my mother there with me instead. 5 minutes later we were heading to her house. She prepared the blankets and a few pillows on the couch for me, like she always did. This allowed me to stay up late watching TV. Again, usually something I usually enjoyed doing. Though it's because of this habit that I'd see the beginning of a sequence of events that would change my life forever. About 2 weeks had passed by then, visiting my mother every day, and me and my grandma were staying up watching cartoons one evening. Suddenly the phone rang and Grandma answered. After a while, Grandma turned the channel from Power Rangers to Channel 5 News. I was, of course, bewildered, but Grandma hushed me when I tried to protest. On the TV was the scene of a burning building, a burning hospital building to be exact. Below was a headline: "Arson attack devastates local hospital." Grandma put her hand over her mouth and began to sob loudly. This had me in yet another confused tailspin. "Grandma, what's wrong? What's going on? Grandma, what's wrong? What's going on?" I got no answer from this though. She was in absolute hysterics, and she got up and bolted to the bathroom, leaving me alone on the couch. I just sat there confused and scared at the same time, watching the burning building on the TV. I don't remember much details about what all exactly was said, but I do distinctly remember hearing that while they were able to evacuate most of the patients, some were trapped and others were missing. It was when they zoomed in on the bright red cross with a smiley face that I finally realised what I was seeing. The burning hospital was the same one Mama was in. My mind was frozen, blank almost, utterly overclocked with everything that was occurring all at once. I wasn't sure what I should do. Should I scream? Cry? Run out of the house thinking I was going to save Mommy? Was Mommy even there? Was she one of the ones they managed to evacuate? Or was she missing too? All of this and about 10,000 other thoughts and ideas flooded my brain like a burst dam. Eventually the tears did come and I curled up into a ball under my blanket. I just laid there crying, thoughts of seeing my mother covered in flames stabbing at my mind. Then I decided to do one last thing, something I remember Grandma always telling me to do when I was upset or scared. Under the covers I shifted to my knees and put my hands together. "God, if you can hear me, please bring my mommy back. If you do, I'll promise I'll always be a good boy and I'll never do anything bad again for as long as I live. Please." I remember just silently crying myself to sleep that night. The next morning I woke up to find that Grandma still hadn't come back to the couch. "Grandma!" I called out. When I got no answer, I got up and went around the house, calling out louder. After scouring just about the entire house top to bottom, I finally had the thought to actually check the last place I saw her go, the bathroom. When I opened the door, my first reaction was confusion. Grandma was lying on the floor of the bathroom in front of the bathtub, out cold. "What is she doing asleep on the floor?" I wondered. "Grandma," I said, shaking her gently. She didn't move. That's when I noticed her chest wasn't moving. Slowly panic started rushing through me again as I started shaking her harder and harder, calling out, "Grandma! Grandma! Wake up!" When I couldn't get her to wake up, I rushed to the phone and dialed 911, telling them as best as I could that something was wrong with my grandmother. They told me to stay on the phone, and about 15 minutes later the ambulance arrived. I watched them check Grandma's body for any vital signs before then lifting her onto and wheeling her out on a gurney into the back of the ambulance. A lot of what happened after that is kinda blurry to me, indistinct in a way, in that I can't really remember many of the details outside of the highlights. I do of course remember Officer Harriet being there again, and I remember her being the one that gave me the ride to the hospital across town, where they'd also relocated the patients from the other hospital too. I also remember that it wasn't long before the doctors were explaining to me that Grandma didn't make it, which then led to Officer Harriet explaining to me that I was going to be staying with my aunt, who was on her way. The last big detail from that time I actually remember was bawling in Officer Harriet's arms, telling her that I didn't want to stay with my aunt, that I wanted my mother to come back. It was soon after that Aunt Mabel came to pick me up. I didn't get to bring anything with me except what was in my Batman backpack. She lived in the next town over, far away from everything I knew before, in a large 2-story house that was secluded at least a 10-minute drive away from the nearest shopping centres. From there, most of this is history. I started the following year, slowly grew up, and was raised solely by my aunt. Sure enough, for the next part, I grew up just fine. I made friends at school, got good grades, and kept my nose clean. In other words, in spite of everything that happened before, I was happy. Life was okay for me. In fact, it wasn't too much longer before I started to essentially forget about my mother, including what she even looked like. I've tried to figure out for a while now how I managed that. The best conclusion I could come up with was that perhaps either because I was still so little at the time, or out of some sort of defence mechanism, I just forgot almost entirely who the woman that gave birth to me was. Anytime I was asked who my mother was, I just gave them Aunt Mabel's name. She was the one who took care of me, who raised me, so she was the one I'd call Mom. Like I said, life with Aunt Mabel was okay. She was cool enough, if not a little too cool sometimes. She'd often spoil me when I wasn't expecting it, like the times I'd come home from school to find that she wasn't home, and to find that she'd gone out for the night and wouldn't be back until much later. The TV would already be on cartoons, and there'd be a wide array of my favourite snacks spread out for me, along with some cash and coupons for pizza for dinner. This usually only happened once in a while, and only on Friday nights. Then over time this became a more frequent occurrence. She'd stay out for longer and longer periods of time, nights and days at a time even, and it even started happening during the week too. Sure, even then I found it odd, and I did start wondering where she was. But my curiosity never lasted long. Hell, the way I saw it, I was living the dream. I had the house to myself and I could do what I wanted. Eventually though, these instances stopped occurring and things were normal again. Well, almost. It was around this time it started happening, that I started hearing the monster. I was 11 by then, and I was in the 5th grade. In other words, by that point you'd think I'd have been long past the point in my life where I'd be scared to sleep with the lights off, right? That I'd be past the whole monster under the bed paranoia, right? Well, one night I was all cozied up in my bed, lights out and everything, when I started hearing noises from under my bed. They were faint and I thought I was just hearing things at first. Soon I started hearing what sounded like thumping from under my bed. It sounded almost like someone was taking a hammer to the wooden floor beneath me. This was a bit harder for me to pass off. In spite of this, I just did my best to ignore it and go to sleep. Then I heard the noise again, louder and a little more distinct this time. I couldn't really describe it in any way, except maybe the howling or screeching of a hyena was somehow being stifled or muffled. It sounded demented, inhuman in a way, in my mind at least. I was confused. What was making that sound? One of my first instincts was maybe it was Aunt Mabel. Perhaps she'd hurt herself or something, or maybe she was on the phone in a heated conversation with someone. A conversation that, by the sound of it, wasn't going well for the other side. But listening more and more, I realised that the noises sounded nothing like Aunt Mabel. As they got louder from underneath me, so too did the thumping noises. It now sounded like the footsteps of a stampeding elephant, and I began imagining something huge, like some large beast coming straight for me. Reflexively, I threw the covers over my head and huddled into a ball, closing my eyes and repeating, "It's not real, it's not real, it's not real." The thumping and muffled shrieks only got louder from underneath me. I started imagining that someone or something was about to burst up from below me and pull me down into the bed or something. That's when I bolted from my bed and out of my bedroom and into the bathroom across the hall. I could still hear the thumping faintly behind me as I ran, imagining that whatever it was crawling out and about to give chase. Sure enough, I made it to the bathroom and immediately shut the door and locked it before huddling in the bathtub. I spent the rest of that night like that, quivering in the bathtub, hoping to God the monster, or whatever it was, didn't come crashing through the door. I was half expecting to hear scratching noises, or maybe a series of crashes of it attempting to batter the door down or something. But neither was the case, and eventually, at some point, I actually managed to fall asleep, right there in the bathtub. The next morning I woke with a start when I heard knocking at the bathroom door. "Timothy Barnes, open this door, right now!" As quickly as my still half asleep legs could carry me, I shambled out of the bathtub and opened the door. Aunt Mabel was standing in the doorway, still in her underwear, with bedhead, eyes wide and red-faced. "What in the name of God in heaven are you doing in the bathroom, and why was the door locked?" By that time I'd learned that from the tone of her voice I knew damn well I only had about 2 seconds to come up with some sort of answer. I stammered, my mind still not having fully awakened. Monster thumping under my bed." Her eyebrows cocked in confusion. "A monster?" Yeah, there was a monster thumping under my bed." I felt like a weenie saying that, even back then, and I was fully expecting her to flip her shit at me, willing me to cut the BS and grow up, you know? But that's not what happened. Instead, I saw a new look wash across her face. A look that I wouldn't have gotten at the time, but understood all too well now, looking back. It was the look that she said she knew something, that she knew that I wasn't making this up. "What did the monster look like?" I looked at her now, me being the confused one. I don't know. I didn't see it." "What did it tell you?" "What?" I asked, completely lost. What did it matter? "It didn't say anything. It was thumping and crying under my bed." "Crying?" "Yeah, it sounded like it was crying." She nodded, a stone-cold serious expression chiselled on her face. Finally she sighed, and her serious expression was replaced with a warm smile as she ruffled my hair. "Don't worry, I'll handle it," she assured with a wink. She said this with that same sweet voice you typically expect to hear parents saying this to a kid 3 years younger than I was. "Go on, get dressed while I make breakfast." By that point, I was so dumbfounded that I didn't even bother trying to protest this treatment in any way. I guess part of me even then was dubious as to why she was taking this whole situation so well. Like I said, I fully expected her to discredit everything I was saying, telling me quit being such a baby or something. I mean, I was even telling myself that, but she seemed to actually believe me. That said, without another word, I just decided to do what I was told and get ready for school. Of course, with most of my night spent as restless as it was, I was very slow getting ready, even almost missing the bus, and I was barely functional at school too. All day the only thing I could really think about was the noises under my bed. So much so that I couldn't even concentrate at all in class, and just my fucking luck too, it was test day. Unfortunately, this wouldn't go unnoticed. At lunch, Wendy, my crush at the time, of all people, sat across from me and asked if everything was okay. Naturally, I tried to bluff, telling her everything was fine and that I just stayed up too late watching cartoons. She wasn't stupid though, and though she didn't press me, I knew she wasn't buying it. She just cocked her eyebrows and rolled her eyes before taking her tray and moving over to another table with the other girls in my class. I felt like a chump, of course, and it's not like I wanted to lie like that, but what was I supposed to say? "The monster under my bed was trying to get me last night and I had to sleep in the bathtub." Would you have believed that? Or would you have thought I was spouting some hyper-imaginative bullshit? I say this to say that I was still unsure of what happened the previous night. And of course, Aunt Mabel's assurance only served to confuse the hell out of me more. What did she mean by handling it? Sure, some parents will say stuff like that to placate their child, to make them feel better. Some might even show some big demonstration or give them something like a nightlight or special object, claiming it'll drive the monster away. But this was different. The way Aunt Mabel said it, with such conviction, almost like she knew something. I tried not to dwell on this any longer though. The way I figured, one way or another, this was a one-off occurrence. Monster or not, everything would be fine. I'd get some sleep that night and everything would be normal again. And the whole thing would be something I would look back on and laugh at, going, wow, I was such a gullible kid back then, wasn't I? Well, looking back, I wish to God I was just a gullible kid. Part 2. The finale. I didn't hear anything strange, and sleep was no problem for me that night, as well as the next few nights, for maybe about another 2.5 to 3 weeks. Because of this, I actually did start to think the whole thing was in my head. Just too many nights spent watching those classic monster movies, right? Well, at least until that Thursday night, almost a month later, when, you guessed it, I heard the noises again. The pounding was frantic, even more so than last time. It sounded like someone was knocking on the door in distress. The way you see in movies when someone's trying to get inside of somewhere to hide from some maniac or something. Once again, I was wide-eyed and felt chills pricking my spine with every hammering blow from under me. This did make me notice one thing though. Last time the pounding was soft, yet close by, and I could feel it through the mattress. Now, however, The noises were louder, but seemingly further away, and I couldn't feel them. I guess noticing this, rather than immediately run like last time, I actually had the balls to climb down with a flashlight and look around under my bed. Nothing, just a few toys and comic books scattered around. I jumped though when another series of blows coming from under the floorboards actually caused the wood flooring to start poking upwards. "It's gonna come through the floor." That was when my courage abandoned me and it was back to the bathtub again. That night I didn't sleep at all, and when Aunt Mabel questioned me about it, I told her that it happened again, that the monster was trying to get me again. Just like last time, she assured me that it'd be dealt with, for good this time, to quote her, and to get ready for school. School itself was even more of a drag than the last time, and I was even called to the principal's office after getting caught falling asleep in class. They tried questioning me as to why I felt that it was okay to fall asleep in class, to which I just gave them the same lame excuse I did for Wendy. In the end, I was sentenced to ISS for the rest of the day, which meant a phone call to Aunt Mabel, and I had to take a note home for her to sign. Great. Not only did I lose sleep again, but now I get to start my weekend off grounded. At least that's what I expected to happen. Shockingly though, when she picked me up, she wasn't mad or anything. In fact, I think she may have expected this somehow. I could tell by the way she just nodded and replied, "I see," to everything my principal was saying, that she could have cared less about this mishap. "Well, sir," she told him with resounding confidence, "I assure you this won't happen again." With this we left and headed home. "I'm sorry, Aunt Mabel," I said nervously, still expecting her to let loose whatever anger she was keeping contained in the principal's office. Instead, she just smiled and looked in the rearview mirror at me. "Honey, you were fine. Trust me, you shouldn't have any more problems like this. Auntie Mabel has it all taken care of." Despite the fact that I should have been relieved that I apparently wasn't in trouble, I instead felt nervous. Something about the way she was saying this actually frightened me that much more than if she'd just screamed at me. I'd have at least seen that coming. But now I didn't know what to expect. What was she keeping from me? Better yet, why? When we got home, she told me to close my eyes, claiming she had a surprise gift for me. I held my eyes shut as tight as I could, still feeling more than a little anxious as she led me to my room. And open! My eyes almost shot like bullets from my head when I opened my eyes to see a flat screen TV sitting on top of my dresser, with an Xbox off to the right. Ta-da! What do you think? Her face was beaming with the biggest, warmest smile I'd ever seen. My heart was skipping beats like crazy, and I thought my head would explode from sheer ecstasy. Holy crap! She giggled before hugging me close to her and planting a firm kiss on the top of my head. She then held up her headset and told me that now I could be like the gamers I would see on YouTube. I rushed over and seized her in the biggest bear hug I was capable of. "You are the best, Mom." "What?" she asked, shocked. I pulled away to see that she had a shocked expression on her face. "What did you just say? You're the best?" "No, I mean after that. You called me Mom." I sensed something in her voice, a sort of excitement, a sense almost of triumph. "Oh, oops. I meant to say Aunt Mabel." No, she said softly, pulling me back into her arms. "Mom is okay. You can call me that as much as you like, sweetheart." I just stood there, wrapped in her arms, unsure of what to say or do. I mean, it'd been twice now that I'd been kept awake from a monster under my bed. Then I was given detention. Yet now here I was, standing locked in my aunt's arms, being rewarded with a brand new TV. She finally broke away and told me she'd be going out for most of the evening and that she'd leave some money for pizza on the counter. "Have fun," she said cheerfully, winking as she turned to leave. "I love you." For a moment I was still in shock. It all felt like some surreal dream. Partly though, I was still sceptical about Aunt Mabel's behaviour. The way she lit up when I called her Mom. Okay, I get it. She raised me for most of my life by that point, and she did everything to make sure my needs and most of my wants were taken care of. Like I said before, she may as damn well been my biological mother. Still though, the way she got so excited when I slipped it out on pure accident was just weird. It seemed almost psychotic. Then on top of that, there was the question of what she wasn't telling me about the noises from under my bed. I didn't feel like investigating that rabbit hole any deeper though, and I turned on my brand new Xbox, finding that it had Halo 3 already in it. It was about 9:30 or 10 o'clock that night that I started getting hungry. "Damn," I whispered under my breath. I lost myself so much in the game that I didn't realise how late it had gotten, and the only place that delivered that late was the Domino's on the other side of town. This meant that it was going to be at least half an hour before they'd get here, and I was pretty hungry. After placing the order, I decided I'd raid the pantry for snacks to hold me over until the pizza arrived. It was while I was doing this that I started hearing shrieking noises from under me. It was soft at first, but steadily increased to a louder and louder pitch. I heard it start to trail away from the area below the pantry and heading towards my room next door. I followed it into my room until I heard a resounding thud from the area directly under my bed. A series of monkey-like shrieks then erupted from the floor, followed by a series of blows to the floorboards. I saw them begin to poke outwards again. Soon I actually saw the wood start to splinter outwards, and I could hear the sounds clearly now. The best way I could describe the shrieks was like a sort of wheezing, raspy outcry. Like whatever it was had problems breathing properly and was at the same time being strangled. Another frantic series of blows sent the floorboards further and further outward. I was frozen. Despite my brain shrieking like how the monster was for my legs to haul ass. They were stiff as boards. It was when the pounding finally stopped and I saw a hand slither out from under the bed that my legs finally broke from their entropy and I bolted to the living room for the phone. Immediately I started jabbing the buttons, dialing Aunt Mabel's number. "Come on, please, pick up." No luck. I must have tried her number at least 5 times, all straight to voicemail. Eventually I could hear the sounds of scratching as well as something dragging on the floor behind me. When I made the mistake of turning around to look, my blood instantly froze solid. Coming out of the hallway was a pinkish red, gnarled and deformed looking hand with its yellow nails digging into the floorboards. Another one soon followed and I could hear the thing's strained breathing get closer. Just before the monster could reveal its face, I turned and bolted for the bathroom. In what felt like one fluid motion, I slammed and locked the door behind me, all but threw myself into the bathtub. Phone still in hand, I started dialing 911.
911? What is the nature of your emergency?
I started stammering. There's someone in my house after me. My mind was cycling in a frenzied vortex.
I'm sorry, you said there's someone in your house?
I heard the breathing approaching the door to the bathroom. "Yes, Someone's in my house, after me. I let out a scream when I heard it banging on the door.
Sir, are you still there? Are you alright? What happened?
It's at the door! I heard it pound harder and harder on the door. I was starting to feel myself slipping further and further into hysterics with each blow that rocked the bathroom door. You're about to break the door down!
Alright, calm down. Can you tell me your name and address?
Timothy Barnes. I'm in my house. 1376 Watercress Drive. I'm in the bathroom and they're about to break down the door. Please hurry. Alright, Timothy. I want you to stay where you are and... She was cut off when another thud from the other side. This one sounded like someone was attempting to batter it with their body, causing me to fling the phone across the bathroom in a panic. When I tried to grab it again, I retracted when I saw the door started pushing outwards. From the other side, the monster let out another of its deranged cries as it continued to batter the door open. My entire body seized up and I think my heart even stopped for an instant. This was it. I was done for. There was nowhere to run, and even if help was on its way, I knew by the time they got there, it'd be far too late. I could feel tears stinging my eyes, and the door was bashed further and further out until finally flying open. There in the doorway the monster stood, bracing itself against the frame, covered in what looked like blood. It was nude and its skin, or rather what seemed to remain of it, was a bright pink and looked like raw hamburger meat. I saw that it was blind in its left eye, looking like a white bulging sphere, and the upper lid on the other eye drooped limply, almost covering it entirely. Long, thin black strands of hair seemed to drape over to the left side of its head, with the right side being completely bare, exposing its scarred, tattered lips on the right side of its face. It felt like time had stopped and the two of us seemed frozen, deadlocked in a staring contest. Tears were pouring from my eyes, yet my tongue was frozen in my mouth and I couldn't even scream. The monster took a slow, staggered step towards me. "Tch, tch," I heard it groan weakly as it inched drunkenly towards me. I cringed and closed my eyes. "Tim, me." Hearing this, I opened my eyes again. The monster was now on top of me, leering down at me. "What do you want?" I squeaked pitifully. It continued staring at me, studying me. "Tim, me," it repeated, this time with some sort of emphasis. I saw its one good eye actually widen a bit when it said it this time, like it somehow recognised me. Noticing this, confusion instantly burrowed itself through the torrential sea of panic and rushed to the forefront of my mind. How did this thing know my name? What even was this thing? I cringed again when I saw its hand stretched downward to me. I felt its hand gently stroke my right cheek. "Tim, me." His voice seemed cracked on the verge of tears. That's when a new feeling was thrown into my panicked mind. Familiarity, though I couldn't yet put my finger on it. "What are you?" What? I asked, now even more bewildered than frightened. What was it trying to say? Mama? Was it trying to say mama? What was that supposed to mean? Its eye widened and I saw a tear travel from it. Me. Timmy. That was when it hit me. All at once the memory of that day at the hospital all those years ago came racing back to me. My heart started racing again. No, this can't be. Mom? Mommy? I reached out to touch the gruesomely scarred, mangled face. It was true. There was no denying it. This wasn't some inhuman creature. This thing, the monster that had been tormenting me at night, was my mother. She was alive. But how? Where had she been? And why didn't she try to see me? All of these were dwarfed, however, when another, far more pressing question: how long had she been here, under my bed? Then I remembered all the long nights Aunt Mabel spent out and about before this all started. This led me to start thinking about all of her odd behaviours, particularly the whole call me mom thing, before finally settling upon a damning conclusion. Did Aunt Mabel know about this? Was this what she'd been hiding from me this whole time? I was broken from my thoughts when suddenly I heard an enraged shriek come from behind my mother, followed by the sound of metal impacting on the back of her skull. Instantly, her body went limp and she fell face first into the bathtub right next to me. Blood immediately started to pool around her head. I looked at the doorway to see Aunt Mabel tightly clutching a pipe wrench. She was breathing heavily, covered in cuts and bruises, and her hair was all messy. Her eyes were wide open and delirious with rage. "He's my boy," she declared with short breath. "Do you hear me, you bitch?" The body of my mother was convulsing violently. Aunt Mabel raised the pipe wrench high again before proceeding to drive it again and again into the back of her head. "He's mine, just like his father was mine. You fucking sleazebag whore!" Every syllable of her venomous words corresponded almost perfectly with each whack of the wrench on the back of my mother's head. Finally, her body stopped twitching, becoming fully relaxed, lifeless. Regardless of this, Aunt Mabel continued stoving in the back of my mother's skull with the wrench, howling like an uncaged gorilla until I grabbed her arm and cried out, "Stop! What are you doing? You're killing her!" She looked at me, for a second examining me with her bulging, crazed eyes. Then I felt her arm relax, her animalistic stare melting away back to a gentle, heartwarming smile. "Oh, sweetheart," she said in that same gentle voice that now made a sound far more deranged than my mother's monkey-like shrieking. "I told you I'd handle it for good, didn't I? It's all right. Everything's gonna be all right." She then pulled me in for a hug and softly cooed, kissing the top of my head. "Be a good boy and go back to your room. Play your game for a little while and let me finish up in here, okay? This can all be our little secret." I shoved her away. "Get away from me! You're a monster!" I watched her smile very slowly dissolve away, melting into a confused, sullen look. Monster?" she murmured. I could hear her voice starting to break, her lips starting to twitch and glisten with tears. Monster?" Her whole body began shaking violently now. The knuckles of her hand that held the wrench whitened as it shook more violently than the rest of her. Monster?" She took a disjointed step towards me, still shaking worse than an alarm clock. You call me a monster? I'm the one that raised you. I took care of you. I am the one that made you happy. I gave you a life. I am your mother, not this slut. You are my boy. You were always supposed to be my boy." I had backpedaled out to the bathroom as she slowly continued forward. Her face twisted into a smile again. This wasn't her warm, loving smile though. This was a psychotic parody of it, with wide, twitching, bulging eyes and a vulpine grin stretching across the length of her face. "Come here. Give Mama a kiss." I turned and ran from the front door. I only made it to the centre of the living room, however, before Aunt Mabel had me in her arms. "You were my boy, mine. That bitch should have burned in hell with the hospital. I should have always been your mother. She took him away from me. She won't take you. No one can have you. Only I can have you." My struggling was pitiful in her iron grip. She had one arm around my throat, with the other restraining one of my arms. The room started to blur, and I started wheezing, feeling the air being forced from my lungs. "Shh. Just take a little nap, my sweet little Timmy." My muscles soon started going limp. Darkness crept upon the corners of my vision, eventually taking over. I faintly heard Aunt Mabel's voice started singing. "Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Auntie Mabel's gonna buy you an ice cream today." Before I could black out completely, the next thing I heard was the crash of the front door being kicked open, and a deep voice shouting, "Freeze!" I felt a small bit of air rush back into me as her arm just slightly released its crushing hold on my throat. "Mom, drop the weapon and let the boy go." "He's mine," I heard her declare with that deranged, psychotic voice. My vision was still blurred, but I saw what looked to be the shape of a police officer standing in front of us, aiming his gun in our direction. "He's my boy. You won't take him from me." "Mom, it's over. Drop your weapon, let him go, and put your hands behind your head." I felt her start to pull me backwards. "He's my boy, and no one is taking him away from me." Almost without thinking, I slipped my chin down into the crook of her arm and bit down as hard as I could. She shrieked in pain and retracted, causing her to drop the hammer and allowing me to throw myself away from her and towards the officer. I saw the officer rush to detain her. "No!" she howled, writhing in the officer's arms as he forced her to the ground. "You can't take him from me! He's my boy! My Timmy!" Outside, 3 more cruisers pulled in and I ran out to them. I started blabbering frantically to them, trying to tell them what was going on. "Inside! He's got her! She tried to get me!" I could barely keep up with what I was saying myself. One of the officers, in a familiar voice, told me to calm down, take a deep breath and speak clearly. When I looked to see who it was, I had a full-on meltdown. It was Officer Harriet. Officer Harriet, who'd been there for me years before, and was here again now. A superhero. My superhero. Just like Superman or Batman. She smiled and wrapped her arms around me, whispering, "Shh, it's okay, Timothy. Everything's gonna be okay." From behind me, I could hear Aunt Mabel screaming at the top of her lungs as she was dragged kicking and struggling out of the house. By now, her screaming had dissolved into inane babbling, completely incomprehensible. They were barely able to force her into the car. One last time, mine and Aunt Mabel's eyes met. Hers were wide open and crazed, and her mouth was wide open like she was howling at me. Like an animal. Like a monster. Eventually, the ambulance arrived. After they checked me out, ruling that I was fine, outside of a few nasty bruises, I told them that my mother was in the bathtub, hurt. I saw them bring a gurney into the house, causing me to remember that day years back when I watched them wheel my father's body away. I had to turn away. I couldn't watch my mother get wheeled out the same way. That night, Officer Harriet took me home with her. The next morning, she broke the news to me that my mother didn't make it through the night hospital. I was told that her last words were, "My Timmy." Aunt Mabel's trial was a month later, where she admitted to both my mother's kidnapping as well as the arson attack on the hospital. I remember how her face looked when she testified to this. The complete lack of remorse. or of any human emotion for that matter. It's a face that I still see at night when I can't sleep. In the end, she was declared guilty and given 3 life sentences without the possibility of a parole. That was the last time I'd ever see Aunt Mabel. Not long after that, Officer Harriet began the process to legally adopt me. She told me in the days leading up to the trial that she'd been wanting to have a little boy. A sweet little boy like you. It took almost a year, but it finally happened. I was adopted by her, my superhero. Ever since that night though, I never got over my fear of what was under my bed. This was very problematic at first because it made me afraid to sleep in my own bed. I wasn't sleeping properly, which of course meant I was doing horribly in school. The only way I was comfortable sleeping was beside Officer Harriet in her bed. Even though she wouldn't say it to me, I knew it was starting to weigh her down too. Finally, we were able to plug me in with a trauma counsellor who I still see to this day, 15 years later. He's helped me a lot through the years, more than I could thank him for. Eventually I was able to get through school and did a year of college, where I met my beautiful wife, Rachel. She's been with me now for 2 years, through both the good times and the bad. We talked about having children, but I always told her that I wasn't sure that was a good idea. I feared that something would happen to them, just like it did with me, that they'd learn the truth about monsters under the bed. She's always been so understanding about it before, but lately she seemed more and more distant towards me, and I'm starting to worry that her patience is running out. That's when my therapist told me to write this all out, get it all out in the open. I don't know if it'll work in the end or not, but for what it's worth, I do feel confident that sharing this may at least help others. Maybe through this I can spread the truth. Monsters walk this earth. There may not be some beast or creature you see on TV or in comic books, but they are real, all of them. They can take many forms or hide in many places, even under your bed. But even those aren't the worst. No, the worst monster, the scariest monster, is the one that tells you they love you. And I hope you all enjoy the Blooper Reel, Part 1. That was the night I learned that the monster was real and more haunting than any... That was the night I learned that the monster was real and more haunting than anything my pre-teen brain at the time could have conjured up. I saw Grandma start crying and not knowing at all. Not knowing at all why. I slowly let go of her and followed the officer into the living room. Finally, she spoke up, telling me that there was a bad car accident and that my parents were hurt very bad and that they'd been taken to the hospital. I wasn't happy with this, but I didn't want to push my luck. I wasn't happy with this, but I didn't want to push any further and risk upsetting Grandma more. Once again, Grandma pulled me away and we left the room while a group of nurses went in. It was soon after that Aunt Mabel came to pick me up. As quickly as my still half asleep legs could carry me, I shambled out of the bathtub and opened the door. Part 2. Instead, she just smiled and looked in the rear view mirror at me. She then held up her headset and told me that now I could be like the gamers She then held up her headset and told me that now I could be like the gamers I would see on YouTube. I pulled away to see that she had a shocked expression on her face. They're about to break the boat! They're about to break the door down! It was nude, and its skin, or rather what seemed to remain of it, was a bright pink. It was nude, and its skin, or rather what seemed to remain of it, was a bright pink, and looked like raw hamburger meat. She took a disjointed step towards me, still shaking worse than an alarm clock. I felt a small bit of air rush back into me as her arm just slightly released its crushing hold on my throat. He's my boy, and no one is taking him away from me. Hey family, please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to chokehold that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. And by subscribing you'll be the first to see all of our new spooky creepypasta stories. A very big thank you to Corpse Child for allowing me to narrate this awesome series. Make sure to check out Corpse Child's Reddit for more brilliant stories. Also be sure to check out the Corpse Child playlist here for more of their stories that I have already narrated. I would just like to say a very big thank you to all of the authors that I've worked with and all the ones that I will work with in the future. So thank you all, my brothers and sisters. And why not hashtag cryptidsroost in your comments. If you would like to support the channel, I have an account at buymeacoffee.com. You can send your coffee donations, big or small, to that site, link is below, or via paypal.me/cryptidsroost. You can also support us on Ko-Fi. It's an alternative to Patreon. The link for that will also be below. And don't forget to check out the end screen, see above. That will also list some more videos in my back catalogue. Take care everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful night. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.